All right, welcome to Meeting of the Minds. Today we got Brad Hauter from DePauw University. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Start us off with just a little bit of an elevator pitch for DePauw University and the soccer team and what you guys got going there.
Yeah, great liberal arts school. I actually graduated back in '87, so I've got the experience of DePauw University as a student athlete, 1 year as an assistant coach after I graduated, and then now I've been back as the head coach for 12 years. Liberal arts school, about 45 minutes west of Indianapolis. You can really do anything from DePauw. One of the really interesting things is because it's a small liberal arts school, it's off the radar in some places. And I was recruiting a kid from Oklahoma City a few years ago, had never heard of it. And then once we put it on his plate and he's wanted to go down the entrepreneurial business track, he starts asking around his community, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, I know that school. So-and-so is president of this company, and there's the CFO of this company, and they're DePauw grads. And so, once you start kind of, dusting off a little bit in your area, you'll start to find the DePauw grads popping out everywhere.
Yeah, especially, I'm from Missouri, and, I wrestled at the University of Pennsylvania, and it was a school I had never heard of until I started looking at it. And I think a lot of times in the Midwest, we're aware of like the local options and we're aware of like the big names. So for you guys, do you try to recruit more locally then, or do you try to send it as far afield as you guys need to capture the best talent?
Yeah, great question. It's really, we're talent driven. It so happens that we're very forefront on the radar of kids in the Midwest. A lot of the alums have settled in the area, so the brand is better known in the area. But, wherever we can find a talented kid, we'll go. And so, referencing back the kid from Oklahoma City, I was actually down at a tournament in Memphis recruiting a kid out of Indianapolis. And he just happened to be matched up against the kid from Oklahoma City who was ridiculous. And so I go through my profile book. I call him from the field, even though he's playing. I said, look, you're the best player at this tournament. We got to talk. And we're not on his radar at all, but we found him through a connection, a kid we were looking out of Indianapolis. And, it turned out that he was a great fit for us. We were a great fit for him. He walked away from a full ride Division I, came to play for us, was part of the group that 16 back in 2015, and then went on to have a pro career before he started his own business.
Wow, that's great. That's a great little success story there. It's very cool as a coach to be part of those life transitions and see kids, take those lessons that they learned as an athlete and then go to apply them for the rest of their lives, which, it has to be the mental side more than anything else. I mean, he's not getting hired or starting a business that's going to be based on his ability to score or defend against, a strong attacker or striker. So what are some of the mental lessons that you think are the most important that athletes gain from sports, and how do you try to enforce and teach those as a coach?
Oh, I'll tell you, the great thing about sports, and not just soccer, but any sport, is it hand delivers you these life lessons. And, what's great is it does it by itself. As a coach, we just have to point it out. Hey, recognize what we just learned there. You learn about failure. You learn about success. You learn about goal setting. You learn about adversity. You learn about how to handle pressure, how to handle stress, teamwork, all these different things that are just organic to sports that you learn, transfer into every part of your life. If you're going to be a successful husband, father, community member, you're going to run your own business, you're going to be a part of a team in the business world. No matter where you go, the lessons that you learn on that field, how many times you have to fall down and just keep getting up and keep getting up and keep getting up. Life is a struggle. You know that. I mean, you just hurt your back.
Yeah.
And these things happen, and you just have to keep getting up and getting up and getting up. And there's no place like sports that provides you those lessons so ingrained. You have a schedule. We got 18 games. You fall down in the first one, you can't sit there and lick your wounds that long. That second one is already scheduled. You got that next challenge. And so whether you're able to mentally, physically, and emotionally regroup, or whether it takes you a little bit longer, you have to. Yeah,
I always one of the things I go back to is, that purpose-driven athlete. And when we have that strong purpose, or we have that strong why, we can accomplish and do things that we would never do without it. I was actually a Nietzsche quote that I saw recently was, if a man has a strong why, there is nothing he can't achieve. So what are some of the whys for DePauw University soccer?
On the field, it's about winning championships, winning games. Off the field, it's about developing good character. That we're going to have, I think we've produced 6 pros in the last 10 years. We're going to have that success. We're going to have successes in wins and losses, but the greater achievements that we're going to have are this population of young men, and I'm speaking from the men's program, young men and young women, if you include all our student athletes, that actually go out into their communities and pay it forward. So when you look at the why from DePauw soccer, it's the, kind of the polishing of the individual, helping them along that journey and getting them prepared for all of the challenges that they'll deal with in business life and family life and in their communities.
Yeah, no, that's strong. And I think we have to have that balanced approach. I mean, we often say if all we do is help athletes win championships, we've missed the boat. As mindset coaches and as a team that focuses on the mental side of sports, we have to directly be coaching people to be better individuals, to have that character and have those values. Because at the end of the day, all sports careers are going to end. And when those end, have we not just created a great athlete, but someone that can now go compete at that next passion and that next endeavor. And I think when we do that, it's one of those ways that we can all locally make a difference. Especially right now, there's a big mood for change, and there's a big mood for improvement. And there's a lot of people recognizing that there are certain issues that need to be improved and worked on. And I think one reason that people sometimes hesitate to tackle those is the immensity of them. And so one of the things for myself that I've always focused on is, that individual approach of like, I can't change necessarily the country or the world, but I can change this young person's life. I can change that young person's life. I can help this team turn a corner. I can teach this coach this. What were some of the influences on you that have had that impact on yourself that have then allowed you to pass that on to others?
Hey, great question. I'd love to go back and be able to pinpoint 1 or 2, tipping points and moments in my life that I could say, hey, these were the places that built the foundations. But, one of the things I've realized as a coach is how many people are involved in that, from great coaches. I had, one of my first club coach was a survivor of Auschwitz and had his tattoo on his arm. And he was telling us stories about how his one friend was too sick to go through the food line. So he took a nail and he scarred his number up a little bit so he could go through it twice, once with that last number looking like a 5 and the next time it looking like a 6. And he didn't go through it for personal gain to get double meals. He went through to keep his friend alive. And so you have a guy like that helps to, at an early age, shape your life and shape your understanding of altruism and selflessness. And that builds part of the foundation. I had great guidance from my parents. My coach, the coach before me at DePauw, Paige Cotton, Hall of Fame coach, the lessons about integrity that he taught. Then you look at the teachers. Emily Sturman failed me in algebra in, I don't know if it was 7th, 8th, 9th grade. And I was like, look, I got the right answer. She said, but you didn't use the correct formula to solve it, so you didn't get the right points. And at that point, it doesn't make sense. But all those, I remember her name. 30 some years later, I remember her name because of the lesson that she taught me on don't take shortcuts. Make sure you're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So you take a look at all of these people who have shaped my life, and not just on the good side. I mean, there have been some people that I've come across who have absolutely shown me the other side of this life and helped to build that foundation underneath me by teaching me how not to be. Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, is that better now?
There you go. Yep, gotcha.
My mother's always been big on you learn from every leader. Sometimes it's just what not to do, and
absolutely.
I know my brothers went to the Naval Academy and they obviously had a lot of really great leaders around them, but in the midst of that, some bad. And, they took a lot from that, and they've, become really great men using both sides of that. And it is funny how those individuals, those little bitty moments or those little bitty interactions sometimes make that impact. And, for us, that's the way we see ourselves as mindset coaches at Winning Mindset, is we're just another member of that team trying to help an individual or a kid or a team be successful. It's hard to raise strong individuals in modern society. It takes a lot of individuals. And if you look at most people that are successful, they've surrounded themselves with, as I've been saying it, an A squad of people that influence them and help them get better. And, coaches like yourself and our Winning Mindset team, that's one of the things we're aiming at. So I want to jump back into recruiting, if that's okay.
Yep.
We were talking about talent earlier, and obviously anybody that's going to play college sports has to be extremely talented. The technical skills have to be high, but mentally, sports are probably somewhere between 60 to 90% is a pretty good range for us to put that on. What are some of the mental skills that you're looking for when you recruit, and where do you try to find those? Because I don't think it's as plain as the athletic skills or the technical skills. So, what are those, and how do you try to figure out what a kid has up in the school?
Yeah, that's a tough recruiting thing. You can see speed when you get to the field. You can see technical ability when you get to the field. Sometimes you can see tactical thoughts and decision making. But what is really, kind of difficult to evaluate is the ability to handle stress and adversity and turn that into fuel and turn that into a positive fuel, as opposed to something that becomes self-destructive. And, rarely do you get to see players in these, on these precipices of, is the anxiety going to crush them or is it going to fuel them? And so we have a fitness test when guys check in, and we call it a mental toughness test. And we recognize that not everybody is going to be at peak level mental toughness, mental performance, where the bigger the spotlight, the bigger the challenge, the stronger they'll be, or the more consistent they'll be. We recognize everybody's on a different level in that spectrum. And so our mental toughness test early in the year, it's really just a physical run and stressful one, but they stress out about it enough so it does get to test how they handle that stress and anxiety. We don't expect everybody to be an A+ in that. And we're very fortunate we have a mindfulness coach who helps us with mental conditioning. So our goal is to win a national championship. Our goal is to have, to be there at the end when the spotlight is brightest. And when the spotlight is brightest during introductions, and I've seen it myself, I've felt it myself. You're standing there during introductions in the national anthem, and it's tough to catch a breath. You're breathing, your heart is racing so fast. Are you in a place where you can perform really well? And so we all feel anxiety. I don't think mental toughness is the ability to ignore anxiety and stress, but it's to process it and be able to perform. And so thankfully with our, Scott, who's our mindfulness coach, gives us all sorts of techniques, breathing techniques, ways to fill your head with positive thoughts, so that 30 seconds, 60 seconds, you start recognizing your heart's beating too much, your breath is tough to catch. You can go into one of these exercises and calm yourself down and be able to find peak performance.
Yeah, no, 100%. We always, one of our things that we talk about is the hero and the coward feel the exact same thing. The difference is in the action that follows that feeling.
Love that.
And I think having a mindful, a mental coach that's helping them with mindfulness, I think that's really impactful. When did you guys bring that person on the team? How long have they been kind of a part of the program?
I think he's been with us 6-7 years. Guys love him. I mean, it's a relief for players. It's like you say, the coward, the hero. It's the same. You feel it, but we've all felt it. We've all felt it in big moments. And we go back to athletics and how it transfers into real life. You're not going to, once you're done playing the game, you're not going to not have these stressful moments. You got your mortgage, you got all these different life challenges, you got illnesses, you have everything that's going to pop up in your life. And if you can learn it through the game, how to calm down in these big pressure moments and make clear-headed decisions, you're going to be well ahead of the game. So we were fortunate that we had an opportunity to bring him in 6-7 years ago. And I'll tell you, the guys reach out to him, not just in the group meetings where he comes to, but if they, if they've got individual stuff that they're stressing about in the classroom, at home, they've reached out to him.
Yeah. Now, once you brought him on, what were some of the changes you started noticing amongst the players when you guys started putting that emphasis on having that person that was so fully focused on that mental aspect?
The biggest thing that I think I've seen on the field is the ability to change directions. So, give an example. Where the practice is just starting off horribly. Could be that I've explained it poorly. That is always a chance. But sometimes, the stress of the classroom, bleeds onto the field, and they bring some things with them, and they're just excited about something, and they're not focused and not connected. And in the past, prior to having Scott and the mindfulness coach, we'd try and soldier through that practice and see if we could get through it and at least get something productive out of it. Since Scott's come in, we blow the whistle. You got 60 seconds, lay down, pick whichever one of the techniques you feel most comfortable with. 60 seconds, get yourself focused, get yourself recentered. Every time we've blown the whistle after 60 seconds, we've popped back in and the drill has started clicking.
Yeah, I love that, because adversity and challenge are going to always pop up, and that ability to be able to come back really quick. And I would bet there's probably players in the team that could do it in much shorter time periods than 60 seconds. It's like anything else. The more you focus on your mental aspect, the stronger it gets. The same as your muscles, your reaction time, or your physical technique. They're infinitely improvable. And I love that you guys are putting that emphasis on it. Which is what the exact same thing that we're trying to do with, hundreds of teams and individuals across the country. So if you were a young and aspiring, soccer player, a high school kid trying to, go play at a good college, trying to maybe one day go play pro, what would be some tips that you would offer that you've learned in your years, being involved with the sport? Because at this point you've been involved with soccer for what? 40 plus years.
Yeah. I think, there's two parts of that I'd start with. One is 1%. And the other part is we've never been, and I don't think we'll ever be at a place in our history where everybody gets to start at the starting line at the same time. In the past, if you're in Missouri in the country versus you're in Cleveland, your ability to top trainers, top clubs, top nutritionists, top everything is better than that kid that might be living out in the country. And so when you come into preseason, now you're all training through the same program, but this person had a head start. With the quarantine and club play and state cups and camps, everything being shut down, right now, every kid is at that same starting line. It's going to be how hard they're willing to work and how much they're willing to focus during this time to get themselves improved. Then I look at the 1%. We talk about this a lot in our locker room. If you truly want to be great, if you truly want to make it to that next level, it can't be just words. You actually have to have actions. And this 1% thought that we have is, where can you grab 1% that maybe another athlete isn't willing to do? Sleep is huge in recovery. Sleep is huge in your ability to focus and concentrate. Can you get the correct amount of sleep? Nutrition is huge. We all know about weightlifting and speed training and work on the ball, and you still need to do those. But can you find these other areas, putting good fuel into your body, not being foolish and making bad decisions on Friday and Saturday night? Can you grab 1% here? Can you grab 1% there? If you really are committed to getting to that next level, to making yourself a better player, and just seeing if you have the ability to go pro, why would you not try and grab 1% whenever you can?
Yeah, I love that emphasis on 1%. I've often said, the most dangerous athlete is the one that gets 1% better every day, right? That constant improvement, that constant desire to get better at something. And the day is not over until I've improved at something, until I've accomplished something today. Now, do you have athletes do anything to kind of track that 1% that they're grabbing here and there?
That's the greatest part about the time we live in right now. There are apps, there are resources available. If you want a sleep app, there's a sleep app, tracks your sleeping. Was it good sleep? And if it's not good sleep, there are different things you can do as far as your light, how long you're on your cell phone, your computer before bed, how are you watching television before. There's all sorts of different ways that you can track that 1% and that you can make adjustments to improve that 1%. So whether it's nutrition, whether it's everything is online right now. there is no excuse for any player to not say, well, I didn't know what I was supposed to put in my body. I didn't know how much I was supposed to sleep. It's all available.
Yeah, I love that. We're big on journaling, whether it's, a gratitude journal.
Yes.
Every day you're writing down things you're grateful for. And I've heard of, we perceive less than 1% of the information we take in from the world, right? It's like our brain automatically has to filter out a bunch of stuff. Otherwise we're totally overwhelmed. And, in that small percentage that we gain, it's always going to be colored by, am I constantly grateful and positive, or am I constantly feeling entitled and negative, right? And like taking the time every day to notice the things that are good, and it's like we were talking earlier, hurt my back recently. And I mean, the initial thing that you could go down the path with an injury is like, oh no, why me? This is going to be terrible. I'm missing out on training time. And I try to look at it as like, I really appreciate the times I've been able to work out. I really appreciate that I'm going to be able to work out in the future. I'm going to do the things right today and be glad that, I can stand up and walk around without falling over like I did a couple of days ago. That ability to stay on that positive and in that gratitude zone is really impactful. And along with that, tracking all those achievements that you've done. We often say athletes shouldn't go to bed before they've written down, what are the 3 things I got better at today? What's my goal for tomorrow? What could I have improved at today? So that we're constantly assessing my growth, my improvement. Am I putting in that 1%? Am I grabbing that 1% that you're talking about if I truly desire that dream and that really, really big goal?
Yeah, and I love that. I love the part about journaling, and then I love the part about gratitude, because I think that, we have this, we're all humans. We have these dopamine hits that are, our body provides us this positive burst every time something good happens. And sometimes we're in this place where the dopamine hits are me-centric. It's, I want this, I want to get this new shirt, I want to get this. But you get a dopamine hit also by making somebody else feel relevant and valued. So thanking a teacher, thanking a coach, going out and picking up a teammate, all of those things make that person, give them a dopamine hit, make them feel better, but indirectly also do the same to you. And so it's this way of paying it forward, but it also benefits yourself. And then when you get to journaling, that, we remember more when we write it down. We remember. So you talk about all this stuff that we're inundated, ads and all this. I mean, your phone's buzzing all day, and you have all this stuff that's bombarding you. And so there is this, only a little bit of information comes in, and that if you can grab that positive information, that good information, and journal it and write it down, it'll cement and stay in your memory better. I remember when I was 18, 19 years old was when I started journaling. And this is before, video tape was done in practices and you could actually analyze what you look like. I thought I was great. I was a goalkeeper going down low to my left. I thought I was great. And one day I had this, and I think a coach gave me this idea. Journaling at the end of every practice, drawing a goal and just putting a dot into all the places where I remember giving up a goal. And then the ones I could remember, describing what happened, and just a sentence. I got caught on my heels. And after a while, there was this, clump of dots lower left. And every day I'm hitting this I got scored on lower left. So, before videotape, I was kind of forced, because I was journaling, to recognize that I might not be as good going down to my left as I think I am. And I was able to work on it and smooth that out.
Yeah, well, and we are all stuck in our own head. And if we allow our memory to be what creates our assessment, sometimes it's flawed. That confirmation bias, and we see it all over society with, everything. Doing some of those self-assessments can be really, really impactful and helpful.
Yeah, and on the other way too. I mean, you're talking about, I thought I was good to my left, and it pointed out that I wasn't. And also on the negative side is sometimes I think we get in our head and we punish ourselves. We say, I'm not good at this. Yet when you really pull it back and take that, confirmation bias out, maybe I'm not that bad as in this area. And that can strengthen my confidence when I get on the field.
100%. I love that. That's great. And I'm just also thinking about, that pay it forward, that gratitude, that's showing it to other people. And man, what type of team do people want to be on? Do you want to be on the team where everybody's selfish and doesn't say anything positive to anybody else? Or do you want to be part of the team that win, lose, or draw, somebody's saying, hey, you did really well in that, in that defensive spot. Hey, that was a great goal you saved. That was a great shot you took. It didn't hit, but you know what? That was a beautifully executed shot. And, I mean, if we're going to build up teams and individuals, I mean, I think the positive aspect and finding ways to build that into the culture, right? And that's really what we're aiming at. It's not just to create a good team, a good player. It's to build that culture, because then it starts to produce those things passively.
Right. And you look at, you mentioned, do you want to be on which team? And so do I want to be on the team where I make a mistake and you point the finger at me and blame me for the results or the lack of execution? Or do I want to be on a team where I make a mistake, you still hold me accountable, but you say, hey, it's okay, we're going to win? Because now that stuff starts transferring. When you get into a relationship and you're with a person that points fingers at you whenever there's a mistake, your fault or not, that relationship is going to struggle. When you get into a relationship where somebody says, you made a mistake, no problem, we'll fix it, we'll move in this direction. Same thing with a company. Nobody wants to work next to the person that's always blaming you for every mistake in the company, as opposed to saying, hey, you know what, maybe if we do it this way, it's a little bit better, and we both become better and the company becomes stronger.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Well, I'm glad we're both on the train of building better people, for everything other than not just soccer, not just sports, not just wrestling or baseball or basketball, but just better people. We got a world that needs strong individuals and strong leaders.
100%. And I tell you what, there's a lot of room on this train, and there's a lot of negativity out there, and it's all noise. And if the positive noise, this is one of my favorite quotes, and I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but it was by Martin Luther King. He said that we should not be bothered by the noise and the deeds of the evil in the world, but we should be outraged at the silence and lack of deeds of the good in the world. Mm-hmm. And so you look at it and you turn on the news, you look at anything and it's negative, 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 negative. And it's just noise. If we can counter it with positive, and it takes so much more energy on this side, but it has such value.
Yeah, I would agree entirely. And the other piece I would add to that is probably finding ways to remove some of those negative influences, right? Like, I know for myself, I try to keep my circle tight, right? It doesn't mean I'm not welcoming, of individuals or teams or, family members or whatever it may be. But like, I try to be very selective about the influences on myself. And if I find that I get done with a evening with somebody else and I'm dragging, that's just bad. That's just typically a person that I look to spend that time elsewhere. Time is our most valuable resource. So this is an interesting question with this. Have you found at times on the team that there are negative influences that you've had to, cut out, and how have you kind of dealt with that? I mean, obviously recruiting is the easiest way and the most positive way to make sure that the influences are mostly positive. But if you had to deal with the coach where there's a negative influence in the team and you have to take action.
Yeah, it's a really tough one. I mean, you hope that you can catch a lot of it through recruiting. When we recruit to a filter, and that filter doesn't change. The first thing we're looking at is character. Are you a good person? You're going to be good for our culture. You're going to be good in the locker room. That second tier is work ethic and fitness. And those two are married, because if you don't have good fitness, you just can't maintain a good work ethic. And then the bottom tier is talent. Your technical ability, tactical ability, speed of play, speed of thought. That'll never flip. That your ability to be the greatest player that's ever come through does not allow you to have a poor work ethic or treat people poorly. So we try to catch as much of it through the recruiting process as possible. But we're all fallible. And so we're fallible in our screening, and humans are, the kids that come in are fallible. And they're 18, 20, 21-year-old young men who they're great because they're also high risk. They're willing to take chances with the ball that other kids might not. And so they're going to make mistakes. They're going to stumble. And our job is to, polish them and try and say, hey, recognize how this behavior impacts us holistically. Recognize how it impacts your teammates. Recognize how it impacts their trust in you. And hopefully we can get, that light bulb to go off, and then to say, hey, a behavior change would be good for everybody, and I'm willing to make it. Occasionally there are times that those traits are so ingrained in an individual that it's instinctual, and they just can't or aren't willing to go back and start making the life changes to become better. And in those moments, we have to separate from that player. I am a complete optimist, but I have long given up the belief that in 4 years I can cure what maybe an undisciplined teacher, an undisciplined coach, or parenting that maybe hasn't put good structure in front of the individual. I can't fix it in 4 years. What has gone sideways for 18 years? If it's a good individual and has some rough edges, we can polish those and we can help keep them on a good path on their journey. But some of these times you gotta cut and say, I can't fix that.
All right. Yeah. And I'm guessing that probably comes after numerous attempts on, your guys' part to try to realign those.
As a younger coach, there were numerous attempts. And then you start recognizing that all of that energy that you're providing that individual is taking away from all the kids who are doing the right thing and who are doing the good things. So I find myself not intolerant, but a lot less willing to say, you've got a fourth chance, you've got a fifth chance. We're going to spell it out through the recruiting process, who we are, what we're about. We're going to lay our expectations of you and tell you what you can expect from us on the table at the very beginning. Nobody's going to go in blind and shocked by what we expect. And then when you get into the locker room, we're going to constantly talk about these things. And when you step off track, we're going to try and push you back on. And if we have to spend too much time and energy there, it doesn't matter about your talent. It's just not worth it.
Right. And I find that these, I was a classroom teacher for 5 years. And one of the things I found is the stronger you make those lines, right? Like I think any young person, any adult really, we want to know where that boundary is for behavior. We want to know where that boundary is for culture. And when those do get crossed, there have to be repercussions and, reactions. There has to, that line doesn't exist if there is nothing that defends it, and as long as those have been laid out ahead of time, we're setting people up for success, which it can be difficult. And then in the moment, it can feel like we're being hard on the individual, but what we really need to be hard on is that line and that culture and those, where the boundary is. And if we stick to that gun in the long run, it helps way more than it hurts. And I think it's actually worse, to make those fourth, fifth, sixth exceptions because, it makes other people question, well, why am I following this? And they aren't. And there's not
100%. Yeah. And you look at that and how that goes to the earlier part of the conversation about life skills and our job off the field and our bigger responsibility as coaches. If you're coming in late or you're not working hard or if we've got a dress code and you're not bringing the right training gear to practice and we continue to let that slide, one, it shows a bad example to those that are doing it correctly. But two, it's a bad life skill. You get into a corporate position or you get into nobody's coming out of college and they're the boss of their time. You're pretty much going to be an employee while you learn to do what you're on track to do. And if there are dress codes in that company, if there are, time commitments in that company, you're expected to be on time. You're expected to follow rules. So, they are tough lessons to learn and they're difficult to teach. I'm sure they're difficult for players to hear. But when you look at the total picture of what we're trying to do, it's such value, not just for us as a team, but for them as they go on after their time at DePauw.
Yeah, I would agree entirely. Well, Brad, I've really enjoyed this. Are there any last points that you'd like to make about the program or just any last thoughts for, coaches, parents, or players that are listening in?
Yeah, I'll tell you, love what you guys do because I think this is that kind of new frontier for athletes is the mental side of things. There's such, training and fitness and cardio and weights. And this is kind of a whole new world, but it unlocks so much because there's so much potential. And I just finished the David Goggins book and he calls it the 40% rule where we're only really using 40% of our potential. And some of it is effort, but a lot of it is all of this stuff that we have the capability of doing, but we don't push ourselves or we just don't understand what doors to unlock inside our minds. So when you start looking at mental toughness and confidence and mindfulness and the stuff that you guys are doing, it's just such value to this next generation that I implore people to start diving further and further into this kind of information.
Yeah, well, hopefully we become the 1% people are trying to grab every week to improve. There's not as many people working on it as, your strength, your speed, your nutrition, even sleeping, and I really, it's been really great to be part of the MindZ team over the last, 6 years. We've gone from, a very small group of us working with a very small group of individuals and teams to, now working with, over 120 teams every single season and hundreds of individuals on top of that. And seeing, this mental aspect become more prominent in sports. And at a time where, mental health is struggling. I think we're recognizing more and more how much mentally there's a lot of people that need help, need support. And, we're able to provide that through a sports lens, which I think is a really significant piece. I'm glad that you guys have somebody that you're working with.
Yeah, you think it's a significant piece? It's a hugely significant piece, because you take a look at all these graphics we see on the pandemic. One person gets ill, they infect, two, they infect, and it's just how it grows. It's the same on the positive side. The stuff that MindZ is doing, you get it into one athlete, and when they become a coach, when they become a father or mother, and their kids need some, they're going to remember. They're going to remember Emily Sturman, the algebra coach, the algebra teacher from way back when, and say, hey, I remember when I learned this. This could help you with this problem. So good spreads just like bad does.
Agreed. Well, thanks for coming on. You have a great day, and I'll hopefully talk with you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.